Hi, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. This is Friday, August 22nd, 2025, in the year of our Lord. And the title of this is going to be Independent Scientologists Discuss God, the Eighth Dynamic. So this is this could go anywhere.
Literally.
That's actually a multi-layered pun.
Right. And you'll see why as we get into the topic.
That's right. That's right. So the mysterious eighth dynamic is going to be our topic, and it's brought to you by ao-gp.org and the College of Independent Scientology.com. And interestingly enough, we did a little research on our two different AI platforms, both Fin on the college and aogp.org, and our trusty Oracle super duper AI that gives citable references, and you can download them as well. That's available on the college. So we're going to get started, and this is the best way to do research for podcasts. And Quentin pretty much uses it every podcast and probably off as well, as do I in auditing. So we're going to get going on this. And so the definition of the eighth dynamic. What is the eighth dynamic? Part of the 1 through 8 dynamics in Scientology. Quentin, do you want to spearhead the definition of the eighth dynamic for us?
I'm not looking at it that specifically right now. Do you have it pulled up?
Yeah, I do. The eighth dynamic is the urge towards existence as infinity. And this is something that even I struggled with when I was young, trying to understand it. Also identified as the supreme being. Key characteristics. The symbol and name, it's called the eighth dynamic because the symbol of infinity stood upright, makes the numeral 8. Interesting point here that if you're new to Scientology and you see the Scientology, the Book of Basics, 0 to 8, it actually means 0 to infinity. Or if you see some of the more advanced books, 8-80, that is infinity hyphen infinity to 0, and 8008 is infinity to 0, 0 to infinity. Maybe clear up a couple of misunderstoods there on why the titles of these books have this 8 in it. So this can be called infinity or the God dynamic. The eighth dynamic represents the urge towards survival through a supreme being, or more exactly, infinity. It encompasses the infinite potential of the creator, important distinctions, non-intrusion principle. It's carefully observed the science of Scientology does not intrude into the dynamic of the supreme being. God reveals himself through spiritual revelation, something you become aware of, and his essence cannot be described in terms of his created objects. I think that's an important point. His essence cannot be described in terms of his created objects.
So you said in the first part of that is where we become aware of the God dynamic. Is that how it was written?
That's it is the God dynamic, yes.
So going by just that, God dynamic, does that mean we see life as God as opposed to God being separate to us? Like when you are the God dynamic, does that mean you are being God?
Well, that's something
Well,
it's a,
so
go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead.
I can't see you guys today. So
Oh, sorry.
go
So,
ahead.
so yes, that well, I'll say this, that as a person continues to develop spiritually, their recognition and ability to live through all of their 8 dynamics expands, right? And so at any moment, at any time, we're all experiencing all of our 8 dynamics, and it only cuts out to a degree based on wherever that person is on the tone scale, based on wherever that person is in their awareness characteristics, like those things are going to affect how a person experiences life through all their eight dynamics. It's only when a person fully expands into the seventh dynamic that they realize their own eighth dynamic, right? And what that means for them. So to, I guess, answer your question, Art, LRH says it this way in the lecture called The Dynamics. He says to tell anybody what the eighth dynamic is before they can see it, they can see the eighth dynamic, is an overt act. So I wouldn't begin to tell you what the eighth dynamic is before you can see it. However, in this conversation, I think discussing it is so important to anyone who is at that level of wanting to experience fully all eight dynamics for themselves. And I think that's the reason we're having this conversation, right? To open up that dialogue about, what is this? How do we experience that? Where do we need to go to get to that awareness?
And I think
Well,
it really depends on what the definition of God is. Do you guys have the tech dictionary there? Like, is there a definition for God in the technical dictionary? Because I'm not at my laptop.
let me look. I don't think
because
there is one for God, but I'm
um,
looking real quick.
because I've just Googled it, and the eighth dynamic in Scientology, existence is divided into eight dynamics or urges towards survival. The eighth dynamic is the urge toward existence as infinity,
Right.
which if I understand it, it's when you will understand and experience and know infinity, which is also identified as the same supreme being or God. So you'll understand your existence as a godlike being.
Yeah, there's no definition for God in the technical dictionary, the Scientology and Dianetics technical dictionary.
Interesting. Yeah,
So your
it's an interesting
awareness,
topic.
your awareness of the infinite.
Mm.
So
Or
infinity,
infinite awareness.
right? Infinity encompasses the infinite potential of the creator. Now, from my viewpoint, at the opposite end of the bridge, I look at it as the can you or should you look at it from a viewpoint of the physical universe or the theta universe, the physical universe being matter, energy, space, and time? Because time is not supposedly infinite from our viewpoint in our infancy on this planet. If you notice,
Mhm.
you notice the word infancy, infinite, the,
Mm.
the key word. Okay, so infinity means what? What's the definition of infinity? Can one of you guys pull that up?
All that is.
Endlessness. Yeah.
Let me give you the exact definition. Hold on a second. So infinity is the state or quality of being infinite, a number greater than any assignable quantity or countable number. The symbol infinite really, literally is that. And it says an infinite or very great number or amount. Comes from the word infinitus. Um, yeah, without number.
Right. Closest thing we have in
A
Well,
the
that's
space or
interesting.
quantity or period that is with a space or quantity or period of time that is without limit.
right now, the only thing we have in the technical dictionary is under infinity valued logic. And he says in Dianetics,
Hmm.
there's a new way of thinking about things which underlies a great deal of its technology. Instead of two valued logic or three valued logic, we have infinity valued logic. Here is a gradient scale which permits no absolute at either end.
Yes.
In other words, I got to get the book in front of me to get closer to the mic here. In other words, there's not an absolute right and an absolute wrong, just as there is no absolute stillness and no absolute motion. Of course, it is one of the tenets of Dianetics that absolutes are not obtainable, but only approachable. Okay.
Mm.
It also
Mm-hmm.
it says to see logic. Okay. Now again, this is
Yeah, I'm looking
infinity
at it right here.
value. Yeah, infinity valued logic, because infinity itself is not defined by LRH in the Dynamic Scientology technical dictionary. So it is, and that seems redundant, but infinity doesn't have a left or a right. It doesn't have an end over here or an end over
Yeah.
there. And so when you look at infinity from a matter, energy, space, and time viewpoint in the physical universe, it isn't. The physical universe is finite. You got the edge of the galaxy over here, and you got the edge of the galaxy over there, you got the edge of the universe here, and they say the universe is ever expanding. How they can say that, I do not know. It sounds like a supposition more than it does a fact, because of, well, that little thing called speed of light and how long it takes to travel and all that stuff. So um, and you're dealing with scientists that may or may not understand what infinite means.
Mm.
So
And it's
I
an
think that.
interesting contrast.
go ahead.
It's an interesting contrast from the first dynamic, the physical body, survival, knowing who you are, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is an infinite being. Um, and like just that contrast right there, I think is really interesting as well, because they're both in the meshed universe. Because like I think to observe the eighth dynamic and to know that you're in that eighth dynamic, you need to be in the meshed universe. But then the awareness of that takes you beyond the meshed universe as well. And so it's like you're going from the first dynamic, which is all meshed, all the way up to something that takes you beyond meshed.
Right. Yeah. And
Mhm.
from my own experience up the bridge, and getting it didn't happen until late new OT7. And then after I finished that, I did Excalibur, because I'd ran out of road with LRH's bridge. And I became aware of the "we're all in the same room" thing, which I've mentioned in a few of the other podcasts. That you can find any other terminal being just by looking, but you're not looking with your eyes. You're just
Your
perceiving, and
eyes.
you're going, okay, there is no matter, energy, space, or time. And for me, the eighth dynamic, that defines the eighth dynamic for me, that we're not all one, which you see a lot here on planet Earth.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we are not all one. We are distinct individuals, and in so doing, you start to see that there's an infinity there, because there isn't any time, space, distance. We're all right there. There isn't this linear
Yep.
thing that you've got going on. It takes 3 hours to get to Los Angeles from Kansas City, type of a thing, or it takes 15 hours to get from Kansas City to Atlanta to South Africa, or Los Angeles
Cool.
to New York is 5 hours, or whatever. It's just boom, boom. That's how it works. And you look at that and you go, okay, did anybody create this? I mean, I've dealt with incidents on L10, on the L rundowns, where I came up with, okay, so I was sent out to go forth, sort of like the Silver Surfer from uh, Galacticus type of a thing at the beginning of the, you can't even say time track at the beginning, because
Mm.
there
Hmm.
wasn't anything, and it was go out and explore, and it's and tell me what it is that you find and what you experience, and report back on your silver
Mm.
surfboard, sort of a thing, as a Thetan, and off you go. And it came off as like a seed, and it's just but I don't look at that to just I have to give it some physical universe definition in order to describe it, because there really isn't any word for it. It was a part of a greater whole, but that greater whole was not, um what's the word I'm looking for, perfect or anything like that. It was just, okay, You're going out from me, and I'm taking part of me, and you can have your own experiences and do your own thing, and you can create and everything, and let me know how it goes. And then one day, quote unquote, long into the future, there was nobody to report back to. So if you wanted to put that in modern terms, God said, "Go forth, my son, and experience my creation." And then you wrote an email, "Dear God, here's what I found out today." and God never wrote back. And it was, it was instantaneous. That communication line wasn't there anymore. That was my experience on L11. Does that mean, or excuse me, L10? Does that mean that well, Quentin, you'd be better to see, give me some comparable magnitudes from a biblical viewpoint, and you as well,
Oh,
Arthur.
I'm waiting.
I know.
I'm
I
waiting.
can see you're like, are you done with your flow? So anyway, what's the other side of this? Is that similar to what we see in the much more recent text in the last couple thousand years, or what? Because I
Mhm.
don't look at it as this is this person that I have to say takes care of everything and all that stuff, because I was given a full range of what I could do and what I couldn't do. You can do whatever you want and let me know what happens. I'll stop there.
I love it. I love it. Arthur?
Um, this is a really interesting subject. Yeah, my mind is thinking so many different things. Hey, um, and I'm trying to, because like you're right. Like as far as like if I want to travel to the edge of the galaxy, all I got to do is think about it, and I'm there. If I want to think of New York, I just think of it, and it appears. I'm there already in my mind. Um, Now I'm at the point in this stage of my journey up the bridge where to me it's just an image that I created as opposed to knowing that I'm there. Does that make sense? Um,
Go
To
ahead.
me, to you, it's just an image. It's an
have I
image
lost
that
you
you
guys? I
created.
think it cut out for a second.
To you, well, I was just trying to understand what you're saying. To you, it's just an image that you created rather than knowing you're actually there.
Yes. So, and I think the difference between postulating being in New York, even though I'm in Malaysia at the moment, um, I'm still stuck with my physical body having to be there, as opposed to theta being there.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I'm just trying to work out this eighth dynamic, and I'm just thinking all sorts of different
Yeah, I
things at
was
the
like,
moment while we're discussing it.
where is that? Where is that going? What I'll say is this, and I love having this conversation. Number one, number two, I love having it with both of you because just the simple magnitude of the conversation lends from like maybe three or maybe multiple different number one lived experiences as well as different um belief systems or different ways of coming up or whatever case may be. But I'll say this: I did not understand the Bible fully, or God as it were, until I started studying Scientology. And it was in studying Scientology and comparing, because LRH talks about knowledge being comparable, knowledge of comparable magnitude, and looking at the logics and looking at the axioms, understanding how these things correlate and how they compare and how they, intersect with one another. And also the cues, by the way, the cues is something really, really good that you can study. But when I started studying Scientology and comparing it to what I knew and understood of other faith practices, and I studied many, it made so much sense to me. So now,
Mm.
when I understand the eighth dynamic or God or infinite supreme being or infinity, scripture says something like this. Scripture says God is both Alpha and Omega, beginning and end, first and last, right? And God is the author and the finisher, right? The author and the finisher of our faith. And so when I hear that, now obviously it's going to be worded through whatever context or whatever tradition or story, whatever that it had to come through. But when I hear that, and then I look at this thing that says infinity, the eighth dynamic, infinity, is a part of our own dynamics, and that we live and survive through, in, and as the dynamics, right? So I'm living through the first dynamic, in or as the first dynamic. I'm living through my second dynamic as my second. I'm surviving through these things. That's a part of my survival experience. And then to read about the logics, right? And he says two value logic would be Aristotle came up formulated two value logic, which is right or wrong. That's two value logic. Three value logic would be right, wrong, or maybe. Some things are ambiguous or some things are just neutral, right, wrong, or maybe. Well, infinity valued logic is a spectrum that moves from infinite wrongness to infinite rightness. There's no end, there's no beginning, there's no end. And then we get the eighth dynamic, which is infinity. There's no beginning, there's no end. And so when one can start to think from an infinity valued logic, when one can start to live from an infinity valued logic, infinite rightness, infinite wrongness, when one can start to move through their life and understand you're surviving through, in, and as your eight dynamics, who are you? Let's go back to the earlier podcast. Who are you? Why is it so important that you come up with your own personal policies? God, I mean, you. Why is it so, why is it so important that you move through this thing and starting with self, starting with first dynamic, expand all the way out to the eighth, till you start to understand what it is that you are doing here. What I love about studying independent Scientology is that you get to explore this stuff in the comfort of your own home, sitting down with somebody who wants you to see and look. He said, look, don't listen. Now, a lot of churches and a lot of religions tell you to listen. You sit down and listen to the pastor. Listen to what we preaching to you. Listen to the, you know. LRA says, look, don't listen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
And so in helping you take a look and looking as far, infinity value logic, as far back, right? Keep on looking, and you start to see some things, and you start to be aware of some things, and your awareness characteristics go up and up and up and up and up the bridge. Life starts to take on a whole different color, right? Life starts to take on a whole different meaning. Now you're not this little creature trying to make your way to New York, right? You're a co-creator, co-creating this whole thing, co-creating New York, co-creating Malaysia, co-creating South Africa, co-creating the world, co-creating the universe. And so you said something earlier, uh, Jonathan, when you mentioned about, we're not all one, right? We're not all one.
Right.
I think I saw something here. You said that we're not all one. What I'll say to that is that we're not all one, but in infinity, it's infinite diversity in infinite combinations, per the writings of Surak. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And so you get this infinite diversity. Go ahead.
No, that's right. Go ahead. Finish your flow.
Sure. You get this infinite diversity and infinite combinations, and therefore you're able to get all logic, all knowledge, all experience, all creation, all life, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That to me is the eighth dynamic. I'm not telling you what it is. I'm just telling you my viewpoint.
Right. Right. Don't go committing an over it there, Quinn.
Thank you. I want to be careful.
You are absolved, and let's define that, you know. Okay, so here's a little bit of a bean burner to use. What was her name in the Matrix that Neo goes to see?
Trinity,
Uh,
the Oracle,
the
the
Trinity,
Oracle,
yeah.
Trinity was
the
his
Oracle.
quote unquote, yeah. Trinity was sort of his girlfriend, and the
Yep.
Oracle was the one that he went to see with the kid that could bend the spoon and all that. This is a little bit of a bean burner
Yes,
here.
the Oracle.
Okay, so and
Yeah.
this is based off of what I've found in auditing above OT7 is new OT7,
Mhm.
LRH is new OT7, is that a thetan is capable of creating theta, right? And when a thetan is capable of creating
Mhm.
theta, a thetan can do the same thing that I was just describing from whence my viewpoint of the infinite and a
Mhm.
creator and all of that stuff is you're spun off sort of, and again, this is just my experience, my viewpoint, and what's true for you is true for you, and I'm just like Quentin said, this is
Right.
just my viewpoint. I was spun off from somewhere else to go forth and explore and report back and experience anything, do anything, and let me know what happens. You can do the same thing. You can do the same thing. And what happens is to a certain degree, as you increase your attention units, it could be said that, you know, in the beginning you only have 100 attention units. We talked about that a lot, and LRH talks about that in Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, Science of Survival, and all that stuff. But see, that's not infinite. You only have 100 attention units. That's finite. That's the opposite of infinite.
Yeah.
Once you get on
There
the
you go.
OT levels and you start acquiring more of your innate abilities, your awareness, your ability to create, you're going to be able to do the same thing where you can spin off and I almost want to use a modern term, an agent, if you will. You know, they talk about AI agents where it's a little portion of the AI that you say, work on my new logos for me for the next 24 hours and give me the best one that you think I'll like, type of a thing. Sort of like that. And you can create another Thetan. Okay, that's again, this is my viewpoint. But see,
Mhm.
this is the viewpoint for me of the eighth dynamic is
Mhm.
I'm gonna be, I might be blasphemous, but we're all gods. And we can send this stuff,
Mhm. That ain't blasphemy.
stuff out there. And that in that you're doing the same thing and have the ability returned to you, that you can sit there and you can say, okay, go forth and create and do anything you want and let me know what happens. You can do that, and
Yeah.
Well, because even
you're not losing you're not losing any attention units. You're actually gaining attention units by so doing.
Yes. Expanding.
Yeah. Art, you want to say something?
and even yeah, because even biblically, when God created man, He created man in His image and His likeness.
Right.
And it's funny because like in the Bible it says uh, God created man in His image, and so that's saying we're literally created as God is. If you were
Right.
to be literal about it, you know, if we were created in the image of God, then that means we're the same as God. And it's funny because like the words are so black and white, and I can't understand how people can mess it up. You know what I mean? Like, how do you mess that up?
Right.
Like, it's so direct. Um, but and then interestingly as well, as the story goes in the creation story, they Adam and Eve kind of go backwards, right? They sort of fall into the flesh. So they've
Mhm.
started at the eighth dynamic and then gone back to the first dynamic, whereas we're starting from the first dynamic, building our way up to the eighth dynamic.
Mhm.
And they were already there. They already were the eighth dynamic in their purest form. But then through their sin and through temptation and those kinds of things, then they became flesh. They fell into the meshed universe. Whereas we're born outside of the meshed universe into the meshed universe, trying to work our way back up to the godlike dynamic, so we can have,
Right.
you know, Eden once again, so to speak, where we are infinite with our surrounds, where we are infinite with this earth and the universe. And I'm kind of thinking as well, perhaps natives that haven't been brought up in the way that we have, they're probably closer to the eighth dynamic. Well, I just kind of think of like the Aboriginal Australian, like they were so in tune with the animals, with the nature, with the stars, with spirits. Like just their philosophies are so in tune that I don't think we can comprehend it being brought up in buildings, being brought up in the way we are. In these societies, all these laws and rules and fines and taxes and all this kind of stuff, I think really prevents us from having the ability to perceive what it could be like being a god.
Quentin?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think it's interesting because Jonathan started off by also talking about um, how we exist as a thetan can create theta, right? Which is the qualitative, like when you're able to understand who you are and you're able to send forth your disciples. I'm going somewhere here, okay? When you're able to send forth that which represents you or represents you, re hyphen, that what ends up happening is that you then become omnipresent. You become omnipresent. You become omniscient, right? All knowing. You become omnipotent, all powerful. Power is just the ability to get results. Stop being all spooky, right? Power is just the ability to get results, whatever the result is, the creation of an effect, right? Axiom 10. And so to become all powerful, you use your disciples. You use your which you send out. Now catch this. All of this is metaphorical, allegorical. But when you understand the generation, the degeneration, and the regeneration of consciousness, when you understand the awareness characteristics that you, where is it on the awareness characteristics, Jonathan? Source is
Source, yeah,
up
sources
at
around
what,
OT3.
OT
Yeah,
three?
yeah.
OT3, you actually get to source, right? Source, and you gotta get there to get there. You understand? But you understand the generation, the degeneration, which Art just talked about, the degeneration, and then the regeneration of consciousness. This is why the bridge made so much sense to me. This is why going up the bridge made so much sense because it's literally regenerating consciousness, rehabilitating your innate abilities, recapturing your own awareness characteristics so that you can be up at source and above. Hello? And so this thing that when we talk about the eighth dynamic, when we talk about God, and as independent Scientologists, when we're talking about this, we ain't talking about, you know, I don't want to get no, we ain't talking about no man sitting up on a golden throne. I want to be very clear. Okay? Unless that's what you did.
Right.
And so we're talking about understanding the fullness of who you are and understanding, I think Art talked about it a moment ago, this the image and likeness that you are so much like that I can't see where you end and that begins. There's no ending to you. There's no beginning to you. You are infinite. You are theta. You are spirit. You are God's. And when you understand this, and it's written all throughout scripture too, by the way. So if you got any questions, put it in the comments below. I'll tell you how it worked. But ye are gods and indeed children of the Most High. Psalms 82, verse 6. Isn't it written
And
that ye are gods? Luke chapter 17. It's all throughout scripture. Go ahead.
it's interesting because like to have that, it's not from a perspective. It's all perspectives, which makes it perspectiveless.
Well,
So you
that's
can't
infinity. Right. That's
observe God or infinity from anyone. Yeah, that's right. You can't observe it from
Exactly.
any angle other than recognizing that
Oh,
infinity is infinity. You know?
right. Right. And that's
yep.
pan-determinism. But the thing
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
where people get caught up on this, and this again, this is my viewpoint and my
Yes.
estimation, where they get caught up on this is they're looking at it from the viewpoint of a body. You're walking around in this meat puppet with 52 perceptions that's just basically a big
Yeah.
sensor array in the physical universe. And you're like, well, if I can't see it, it didn't happen. If I can't know it, it isn't knowable. But you're doing that from the viewpoint of a body because I mean, I'm not even going to say most of the time. Anybody that I approach and say, okay, recall a pleasure moment. You're the best pleasure moment you've got. And we've talked about this in other podcasts, and I get them to look at and to go back to the other podcast, who are you? Who are you really? Okay. If they're really being themselves as a thetan, and you get them to look at this picture on their that they've saved as a being in their analytical mind of a pleasure moment, they see their body from the outside externally. And they go, "Oh my God, I've never thought about that." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Nobody,
Experiencing something pleasurable.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
right, because it's not part of the reactive mind. It's because they are being themselves, and you're sitting there, and I don't go this far in it, but in this podcast I can. You're being, you are yourself. Yourself is not that body, and at that point,
Yes.
you are now realizing you are, wait for it, infinite. Because your
Mm.
perspective and your viewpoint
There you go.
is that you're looking at a movie on a playing field known as the mesh universe, and you can look around and you can see in 300 and it's even unfair to say this because we're dealing in physical universe concepts, and that's the hardest thing about this to get across is you're looking as a thetan. You don't have a perspective from let's say this angle to that angle. You can only see what your eyes can see. You can see everything around you, and you're like, wait a minute. It's almost like being in a video game where you see everything at the same time. Okay. Video games are manufactured in such a way that you're looking at it from a perspective of having a body. But you can look around. If you could look around all the way, you're just like, I'm on the holodeck, for lack of a better term, and it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are aware of self. That is the infinite. You are the infinite. It is not this body that can only perceive these things. And when you start to get that, you go, oh, okay. So if something caused that body to stop working, I'm still around. Well, that's because you're infinite. So
Yeah.
the eighth dynamic is
Right.
you. You're not
It's
going anywhere. You can't kill a thetan.
and it's interesting.
Right.
It's interesting because like there's no words you can actually use to describe it at all. Because in order for you to observe it, then you haven't reached it.
Right.
Recognizing that you have observed it, you failed at being it. Using the word itself doesn't actually describe it. There's like it's such a it's hard to comprehend with our
In physical,
brains.
yeah, well, your brain isn't
And
going to
even
do
just
it,
me
but
saying that is incorrect statement.
yeah,
You know
right,
what I mean?
right, exactly, because you're trying to
Yeah.
you're trying to describe something in the terms of a limited plane of the physical universe. The physical universe
And
is
it's
not,
impossible.
A limited
It's
viewpoint.
impossible.
yeah, it's impossible. So it's a conceptual understanding that and to even say just like what you said almost uh I I live forever because you're looking at it from the viewpoint of English terms of what I is and all of that. It is just
That's right.
I am.
All right.
I
I'm
am.
going to end this podcast because infinity is wordless, nameless, speechless, letterless, imageless, knowingness, perspectiveness, the
Right.
entire dictionary in all languages cannot describe what we're trying to describe.
Right. And that that is an infinite
So,
concept, because it leaves everything open. That is the
But
eighth dynamic.
yeah.
yeah, but the interesting
Well,
thing is
and I
there is a
mm,
path to it, which makes it really interesting.
yes.
There is a process to achieve it and reach it,
Right.
which I find
Rene
really interesting.
Descartes. Yeah. Rene Descartes, famous philosopher, said, "I think, therefore I am." And the word, and Jonathan kind of touched on this when in his viewpoint on along the seventh dynamic and OT7, I think he said that the the word exist, to exist, right, comes from the
Yeah.
Latin word sistere, which is an infinite. Cause, I place myself is really what it means. I stand or I place myself. This is what it means. So from the Latin word sisto, which means I place myself, and ex, which is out of, that's you coming into existence, or you being in existence. You're existing, right? With no beginning, no end. You existing. And when you exist, you place yourself
That's right.
per the Latin derivation of the word. I'm
That's
just looking up the word. I place myself and I stand. X means out of. And so out of infinity, a dynamic, I place myself, first
Mm.
dynamic.
right.
Exist, existo, existere. Out of infinity, I place myself. Boom. Drop
Mm.
mic.
Yeah. Right. So at that point,
If you
you
get this,
yeah,
So do you have to displace yourself to go back to infinity?
well, and that's the point. At the
go ahead,
time
Jonathan.
that
What are you saying?
you make that statement, you are saying, I made a contract with myself, and boom, I've agreed to become aberrated because now I exist.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because
Like Adam and Eve.
I had to place myself. I had to place myself here in order to be here. And dang, why'd I do
right,
that?
right. And oh, look at those
Shit,
arrows
if I
coming
know.
towards me all of a sudden, or whatever. Because you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Because when you look at and I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it again, and I know we say it in podcast after podcast after podcast. If you know, you're already going to know, which is infinity itself. You're already going to know, and you're going to say, okay, a thetan has to agree to become aberrated in order to exist, because you already are. But you're saying, I exist. Okay, I'm in a playing field. I'm in the video game. And what are the rules of this video game? And then, oh, there's this solidity. Oh, wait, because there isn't at all. It's just the fact that you've convinced yourself that there is. And that's the thing. That's how we're all in the same room, is when you're not doing that and you step outside the body and go, I'm a thetan. I can perceive anything I want to. And then you come back and the meter says, read through the body. Oh, there's that person. Hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. But you're not seeing a picture of them. You're not seeing their face. You just know that they are. You're getting in communication with another being that's on the other side of the universe in some cases. Because
Right.
there is no other side of the universe. You have to step out of that holodeck, if you will, of the physical universe, and when you become aware of this, everything and everyone is there. There's no time, space, speed, distance, none of that stuff. And that includes knowing. And you have to dumb yourself down to exist and to say, okay, now I'm back into the video game, and this is that, and And so, but see, the whole point of this podcast, the eighth dynamic is you need look no further for the eighth dynamic in infinity than I am. I am myself, and I can do the same thing and create other little myself. And I can say, go forth and experience in the theta universe. And if they decide to exist, that's up to them, or they can do something else. So that sort of describes infinity. It's very hard to describe in words.
I remember when I was young, I created this friend. His name was Billy. And I created this friend named Billy, and I really, really loved Billy. And me and Billy had a really, really good time together. And when I got a certain age, I can't remember what age it was now, but when I got a certain age, Billy, uh, and this is the way I'm going to say it because I didn't understand what it meant at the time, but this is what I would say. Billy killed himself. Okay, and my little friend Billy that I created, killed himself, and he ceased to exist. I still remember Billy to this day. I can describe him. I can talk about him. I can tell full stories about Billy. Billy was Billy. Okay, and Billy decided to cease to exist. Okay,
right.
And I remember creating Billy, and so what you just described, Jonathan, when they can decide to go on existing and do what they want to do or not or whatever, it makes total sense to me. Yes.
Right. So, and that comes down to why the seventh dynamic is the seventh dynamic, because the seventh dynamic comes before the eighth dynamic. The seventh dynamic encompasses the entire spiritual universe, all forms of spiritual existence and awareness, whether they have specific identity or not, Billy or not Billy. It's the realm of theta, spirits and spiritual concepts that exist beyond the physical universe. So one bleeds into the other. And again, words fail.
So would it be safe to say that the seventh dynamic is being able to observe the potential for infinity by seeing the other side, and then the eighth dynamic is actually being it? So going from perspective to what you're actually perceiving and becoming the perception itself.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you also have to look at viewpoints.
Recognition and experience.
Right. Viewpoints of dimension. When you say something like that, because to have a viewpoint, you're already, and I hate to use the word fail, but you've already dumbed it down, because a viewpoint requires what? Dimension.
Dimension,
how do you have a viewpoint without having dimension?
Dimension points.
But if you just know, now you're talking about infinity, because there's no dimension it's no dimension is required. You need not apply for dimension because you already know. Forget that. I don't need dimension.
It just is.
It just is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's interesting because, like, even looking at like the other things that stemmed from Scientology during the period, the remote viewing programs, the psychic work, all that kind of stuff coming out of Scientology as well, the CIA's relationship, all those kinds of things, Stargate, like all that stuff that stemmed from this tech, which is really interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to one of my pre-OTs yesterday, who is in touch with the remote viewing community, quote unquote, and inexplicably so, nobody in the remote viewing, quote unquote, exteriorization. And when I say exteriorization from the body and being able to, and again, words fail, going into the future on the track, the timeline in the physical universe, which requires a viewpoint of dimension, I might add, they're all coming up with similar outcomes without having to talk to each other. They're not looking for anything. They're just viewing into the future of the time track, the agreed upon physical universe, that these certain things are going to occur, and they're not, and then they're coming back and saying, I got this, and I got this, and I got this, and I got this, and they're all similar outcomes in the physical universe, but they're taking a viewpoint of dimension, but at the same time they're going into something that not is, that is something that might be, because they're perceiving it from their own viewpoint, their own viewpoint of dimension that they're putting out there and perceiving, because they're getting viewpoints of dimension back from beings in present time and what's being put out there, instead of there just being one answer. And it's not that I look at that community or anything. This is just something that was told to me, and I thought, isn't that interesting that there are these different outcomes and everything from these viewpoints of dimension going out and looking at it, but they're exteriorizing to go look at it. So there's an agreed upon level or middle ground on the whole thing. Go ahead, guys.
Which is reality, right? Reality is an agreed upon viewpoints, viewpoints that are agreed upon as dimension points, and therefore we get reality. I think that when we look at life from the eighth dynamic, to make sure I say it right, but when we look at life from the eighth dynamic viewpoint, what ends up happening is life becomes, in my opinion, less complex, right?
Yeah.
Life gets from the perspective of infinity, right? And then when you see life from the perspective of infinity, and the infinitude of life, the infinitude of your own existence, the infinitude of all that is, when you see it, I mean, down to the very atom, down to the very electron, neutron, proton, down to the very string theory, whatever you want to call it. Well, if you want to look at it from a physics perspective, when you look at life from an infinity viewpoint, there is no distance, there is no separation. If you want to make money, if you want to, and that's something that you enjoy, and that's something that you want to have and experience, okay, who are you being? We do have, y'all know where I'm finna go with this. Who are you being, and what do you do? However you do your do, because I do my do. Okay, who are you being, and what do you do so that you can have what you say you want, creator, so that you can have what you say you want. And so I think that taking this perspective as independent Scientologists and going up the bridge so that you can increase and expand your awareness characteristics in order to be able to do this from an OT perspective, to be at complete cause over life, matter, energy, space, time, and thought. Come on, man, what are we talking about here? Why is this still a conversation? Why are you still sitting there waiting for register? Call me. Get it. Go to the Fin. Go to the website and do what are we talking about here? Because there's no other way to live. I'm telling you now. When you look at life from this perspective, you'll get to a place where you say, "There's no other way to live. Why would I live any other way than God?"
Right. And I wanted to point out with what I was talking about as far as with the remote viewers and everything, and this may or may not be a mind blower of a statement, but the thing is that there were an infinity of outcomes coming from these people who were remote viewing.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? And then if you say to somebody who's going up the bridge and they're like, well, what do you think about all of this, Jonathan, Quentin, and Arthur and everything? My answer would be, what do you want to have happen? What do you want to have happen in the future on planet Earth?
Yeah.
There's an infinity of outcomes. What is your infinity of outcomes, and what is finite that you want to have happen in this piddly little restrictive physical universe? Because, well, in the end, ultimately, it doesn't really matter outside of the survival of you or the species or whatever. You're gonna be around, baby. You're gonna be around, and that's all there is to it. So you could do something to help it, or you could do something to hurt it, or you could do nothing, and you could let other people decide out of an infinity of outcomes what's going to happen. And you can't limit yourself to the physical universe. You have to be able to grant yourself the beingness of you are infinity, and that's all there is to it. And get there and understand this concept, because it's very, very difficult to describe in words, in film, anything having to do with the physical universe. It's something you have to realize about yourself, and that infinity and God are the same thing. And you, my friend, are a God if you so choose to accept that opportunity and regain what it was and is that
And
you
responsibility.
and responsibility, right? Because if you fall away from that, well, now there's a finite, not an infinite. Artie?
Yeah.
This is a pretty cool. This is actually a really cool topic. And all I have to say is it's wordless.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's knowing, and I think it probably defines the definition of Scientology to the core, knowing how to know. And there is a difference between knowing and knowing. And I think as a small example, it's like knowing there's beef stroganoff, and then there's knowing how to make beef stroganoff with a recipe, and then there's just knowing how to make beef stroganoff.
Right. Right. And that's an infinite right there. If our listeners get that.
Right.
So we can't go on infinitely with this podcast. We've described.
Did we define it?
Did we define it? Did we talk about it from our own viewpoints of dimension inside a box known as the physical universe, and a podcast and all of this stuff from the micro to the macro and beyond the macro, because it's not macro anymore when it's infinite, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's a pun. So we hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and you too can be part of the eighth dynamic. It's just a matter of knowing, and that is an infinite concept that you will find through auditing and training, and really wrap your knowingness around this. I'm not even going to use a body part as a metaphor or anything like that. Just learn how to be yourself, and you will realize what the infinite and what quote unquote God is. But when you enter in that God thing, all of a sudden you think it's something else, and then it's an image, and you've dropped back down into it. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. So we're gonna.
My grandma used to say, "Don't be silly."
Yeah.
She would say, "Don't be silly."
Don't be silly. To quote the Matrix, free your mind. Don't think in terms of a program that you've agreed to be a part of. Step outside of that program. So for Arthur, Quentin, and myself, have an infinite degree of possibilities, and namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Bye-bye.